welcome back. Let's continue our talk of CSS Grid. So in the last example, we made a simple layout with a grid. Let's actually take that idea and apply it to the Zen Garden page, right? And there's several places where you could put a grid in there. I mean, you could just get creative and put a grid like anywhere, right? But I was looking at the Zen Garden page and, I saw a couple things that I thought maybe, suggested they might be laid out in a grid. So, the sections could be a grid. So actually the whole page, like this could be one cell, this could be another cell, right? This down here, participation, or what's this about, could be another cell. Maybe these paragraphs, each paragraph could be a cell. That might be a little weird though, because we usually don't read, kind of in blocks, we kind of read top to bottom, right? Another thing that I saw was this selected design section. So actually each one of these, like, design name and designer name, each one of these actually is kind of like a little card, right? Like, because it's a little bit of information that's separate from the rest of the page and it works together, like design and designer name, right? And then the next one is design and designer name. Like these are separate from everything else on the page, related, but related with each other, right? And, this is kind of a list, which is nice, but, we could make a grid out of this, right? Maybe even this selected design, archives, and resources, each one of these could be a cell, right? So we'll come back and do one of those examples later, but, one of the big layout examples. But I think for right now, what I'd like to do is try and lay all of this stuff here in this list, lay it out as a grid, okay? Because that'll be a pretty easy one, okay? So let's take a look at the markup and see what we have. So looking at the page here, if I scroll down to the select a design section, right? Or it's actually ID design selection, right? And then inside there, it has an H3 and then a nav and then a UL. So we could actually lay this out as a grid within a grid. So this could be a grid, and then we could put the H3 in one cell and then make another cell for this stuff, right? But what I'm looking at right now is this UL. So I want to take that, and then each one of these is going to be the children, and the list items are going to be the cells, okay? And then inside that cell, we have an anchor tag. The word by is just kind of floating in there, and then there's a second anchor tag, okay? So let's remember that. So I'm going to go select design a selection, right? I always use class names with CSS and save this stuff for the IDs for JavaScript. So I'm going to stick with the class name. So here's what we got. I'm going to go here. I'm going to make a comment, grid for select design. Oops. Okay, and I'll put the class name in there, and I'm going to get the descendant UL, right? And then we'll say you are going to be display grid. Okay, done. So I'll save that and nothing happens because we need to define our columns. So next I'll say grid template columns, and I'll decide how many columns I need. So let's do repeat, and let's repeat, how many do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8. So we can do 4 columns. Let's do 3 columns for now, but we can switch to 4 later, right? It's pretty easy to do. And every column will be 1 FR. Okay? Oh, look, we've already got a grid. Okay? Now it doesn't look that great. It needs a little bit of work. So maybe that UL, I'm going to give it list style none because I don't want the bullet points. So that'll get rid of these bullets, right? And then remember the list has some padding and margin on it. So let's remove that. Let's say padding is 0 and margin is 0. Okay, so that's looking okay. Better, needs a little bit of work. Let's style the LI tag. I mean, we've done all we can here, right? This is our grid. Okay, done. So I don't know if you're realizing this. This is really easy. I think this is easier than Bootstrap. Okay, so next let's style the LI tag, right? This is easier, and we haven't even hit all the properties yet. So there's a lot of other properties that we can play with, right? Right now, though, what I want to do is I want to get these li tags inside our UL. And let's see, what do we want to do? Let's give them a little bit of padding. I think these also have some margin, so let's just make sure that we get rid of the margin there. So I'm going to say margins. Maybe they don't have any margin, right? And then let's get rid of, or let's give them a border so we can see them. So I'm going to say border style solid, and that looks pretty good. And then maybe we need a little gap between each one, right? So I'll go back up here to grid, and I'll say our grid is also going to include a gap. So I'll say grid gap is, let's make it 2M. Okay, so now I got a good space there. I think that looks pretty comfortable, maybe a little too big. I don't know, I'm going to stick with that for now. And then maybe we need a little padding for the content here. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit of padding to push our content inward, right? So let's make the padding 2M also. So that makes kind of a nice little card for everybody. You know, I like this, but maybe I want to arrange the elements in here vertically, right? And there's a couple ways that you can do that. So we could use Flexbox. So let's try display flex, right? And that arranges everybody in a horizontal row by default, but why don't we switch this to flex direction of column. Okay, so now everybody's in a vertical arrangement, right? That wasn't too hard. I think that actually looks pretty good. You know, maybe I'd change this heading here and then maybe, you know, kind of work on the box. Maybe put a background image in there, right? I could put a picture over on this side as a background and then leave the names on the other side. I don't know. Anyway, so you get creative with this, right? So this kind of walked us through. We set up a grid here, but the grid is very powerful. So there's a lot more that we can do with it. But you just saw with very little markup, we arranged everybody in a grid easily with a lot of control over how that grid was laid out. And then we also embedded a flex container or a flex box layout inside each grid cell. Okay. So anyway, thanks for watching. I hope that's useful. Take these ideas and apply it to the CSS Zen Garden page, right? So look for other elements that you can arrange as a grid. I think actually this footer section might be a good candidate too, right? So anyway, thanks for watching. Maybe resources also, right? So I'll see you in the next video, and then we'll explore grid a little bit further, and we'll look at grid areas for making complex grids.